Welcome to Politically Sober. Hello everyone, my name is Hashim Rida. Today we'll be doing something very exciting. We'll be doing the first interview of the podcast. So this interview will be about Brexit, a very appetizing topic indeed. Now, before I begin, I'll be giving some preliminary information about the interview. So in the beginning, we'll be talking about school and politics in general and how they're intertwined. And then later on, we'll be talking about Brexit. For those of you who don't know, Brexit basically means the United Kingdom exiting the European Union. The Brexit referendum occurred in June 2016 and the Leave campaign won, and it has been the main topic in British politics ever since. There are many different types of Brexits that came after the June 2016 referendum: hard Brexit and soft Brexit. Hard Brexit indicates leaving the EU trading bloc and the customs union. A soft Brexit indicates the contrary, meaning initially no tariffs, but you're still de facto part of the European Union because you're part of the European Union institutions. However, currently there are really two main options out there for Brexit: a no deal, which is basically crashing out of the European Union, and the checkers deal, which Theresa May wants so that the UK can exit the European Union. This checkers deal includes a transition period where British MEPs leave the European Parliament. MEPs means Member of European Parliament. Now, one thing to clarify with what we said closer towards the end of the talk about the EU Parliament not having a say in rejecting legislation, this is actually false. Me, the host who said it, is false. You can be happy now. However, the Parliament cannot repeal legislation on its own, as the EU Commission has to propose legislation to repeal or amend current laws. So this is kind of the democratic deficit, part of the democratic deficit within the EU Parliament. It can reject legislation, but it cannot repeal or amend current laws on its own. If the EU Commission does not propose repealing or amending current laws, it is basically impossible for the EU Parliament to repeal or amend legislation on its own, as I said. But the thing is, the EU Parliament does hold the EU Commission accountable, so it is arguably able to balance out. So that's basically some preliminary information about the interview. I know some parts were a bit more technical, like the end, but I had to clarify. So that's it, really. And enjoy the interview.
Hello, everyone. So today we're talking to a student from U of T. He's studying philosophy right now. So his name is Anthony Croft. So Anthony Croft, tell me about yourself.
As you say, I'm a first-year student at U of T, and I was accepted to go into political science there, but pretty soon after starting, I'm switching to philosophy. For a number of reasons, primarily around the social sciences emphasis on science. It's trying to be something that it isn't. It's trying to add like a scientific dimension to social affairs and social life, and I think it's a mistake to do so, because it's not really it's not like looking at science. It is somewhat dynamic and somewhat
so subjective.
It is. And there's more variables to it than can be codified in like a sociology study or something,
So you're doing philosophy because you want to kind of get the basics, right? Like,
I want to understand there's a sort of framework under which you make a series of assumptions if you're going to go into politics. Firstly, that the social world can and should be changed, and that you should take an active role in changing or preserving the world, whatever view you take on that. Philosophy is sort of understanding the world rather than actively seeking to change it, and that's I think the distinction that I draw between politics and philosophy.
So what do you think of like youth being in politics in general?
Well, it's certainly. I've been astounded in high school and in university at the number of people that just are completely unaware of anything. You know, they wouldn't. I've heard people think that Canada's got a president. I've heard people say, you know, that they don't know what Parliament is. They don't know. Someone told me. Someone thought Justin Trudeau was from the Communist Party. It escapes me how you could think that, but
Oh my God.
you know, that level of ignorance is not really conducive to civic life, playing an active role in civic life. And I'm not saying everyone should be, you know, on Twitter arguing about politics and everything, but you know, you should be aware of, you know, what's going on at least.
Yeah, you should be aware, and you should be like, you shouldn't really fear talking about politics.
No.
I think that's something that a lot of people fear talking about, because like it makes politics more toxic when you're
absolutely,
you fear it.
Yeah.
You fear talking about Trump. You fear about talking
Yeah.
about the current political situation because you'll be scrutinized for your opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something of that sense.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we encourage people to talk about politics, but in a more like less radical way.
Yeah.
In that.
Well, I feared in university that it was going to be sort of one-sided and that a certain view was going to get the majority of airtime, but I think that was really more of a problem in high school, that you had, you know, teachers laying down the law about what was acceptable to think and what wasn't. In university, it's a lot more free. Which wasn't what I was expecting, given, you know, the Jordan Peterson warnings and everything. I thought there was going to be, you know, I was just going to be lectured at rather than, you know, given space for critical thinking, and that isn't how it's turned out. So, you know, that might just be my university, but I think that's probably speaks to a wider picture.
Frankly, about Jordan Peterson, I used to kind of like him, but now I feel like he over dramatizes a lot. And concerning like in school, I didn't feel like there was a lot of teachers that would, personally from my like experience, that would lay down what's the acceptable opinion for me. But it might be because I'm a specific high school.
Okay, I didn't find that, but it depends what sort
teachers.
Of, yeah, exactly.
Like, the teachers.
If you're in the social science department in high school, you know, you sort of see that there is a sort of agenda going on there, more that sort of resembled what Peterson was talking about, and I sort of saw that, and I thought, you know, maybe there's a point here. But in university, I have to say, it's nothing like that anymore. But high school, I'd definitely say, is quite ideological, and I think a lot of courses are taught along the lines of an ideological track that is, students are expected to just toe the party line, and that's the end of it.
Frankly, for me, again, I think high school has a slight ideological way, but in university, because I go to Mac, you go to U of T, it might be a bit different. I can feel there's more ideology, for example, at Mac, personally, what I sense, than in high school. That's how I feel. But
more ideology? Yeah. Really? I'm surprised. But I don't know. I mean, like, if you read the district school board, you know, like, if you went on their website, you'd see what ideology contributed to what you find there, like their goals, their mission statement, or whatever. It runs along the lines of a certain view and takes into account a certain number of assumptions that a lot of people probably would like to challenge. But
I think because there's individuals, right? Teachers are individuals too. Like, they're not following this ideological pathway that, for example, maybe this school board set up, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe, yes, there is some sort of push towards that direction, but I definitely think because people, again, are individuals, people make different choices.
Well, I mean, in high school, I thought the thinking of the teachers was pretty consistent, as though it had sort of been taught. I don't know what the what do they call, the PD Day development courses, whatever the teachers go on. I'm not sure what they teach them there, but I think it's probably along the lines of what they're projecting back onto us.
I don't really know about that. I never heard of those.
You know, like PD days, the teachers, you know, they had training and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, you think there was some...
because I heard from a couple of teachers that was the sort of that was what they were doing. Those sort of equitable education, which I'm sure had an ideological bent to it. So,
if it says equitable, it might have some.
Yeah. So and it's consistent. Teachers are consistent, but professors, because of the emphasis on academic freedom, they can go all over the place. And I think that's a good thing that they have this freedom, and so then students have a similar freedom in what they're able to argue as well.
Yeah, obviously there's talk about like freedom of speech, etc., right?
Yeah.
So I know you're a Brit, obviously, as we can tell from the accent.
Yeah.
So I know that you indicated to me that you're very interested in Brexit. Talk about Brexit and all that stuff. So what's your opinion on the whole, let's just say, quagmire that's now going on, right?
Well, I'd firstly point out that my TA once said, I was in a tutorial for politics, and she was saying, do you want to give the British perspective? And I wanted to take issue with that because there's no single British perspective. I think this is about as polarized as you could possibly be. I mean, not that there's ever really a consistent collective opinion, but I represent a British perspective. But coming to my view of the current shambles, I've been a member of the British Conservative Party, and I supported Theresa May up until the Chequers plan.
Oh yeah.
I think it was before the summer, I believe it was announced, or maybe it was
July.
In the summer.
I think.
Maybe July. Yeah. I was with her until then because I think that it breached the 2017 Conservative Party manifesto, where she outlined that leaving the EU would consist of an independent trade policy, end of free movement, which I think end of free movement is still safe, but the hard border in Ireland was avoided, and there was no regulatory divergence within the UK, which under the current plan there is with the backstop in Northern Ireland. There is a divide down the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland, part of the UK, and the Great Britain, the rest of the UK. And I think it was a great betrayal by Theresa May to go down that path, and I don't think all options were exhausted. I think there was a lot that could have been done at that point. It was by no means was at the point of surrender on the British side, or it didn't need to be, but now that seems to be the way we've gone.
But so in terms of you said that you didn't really like what Theresa May did. Is it because it was a soft Brexit? You wanted a hard Brexit? Or
I wanted a Brexit consistent with the wishes that what the campaign was in the EU referendum. The vote was on leaving the European Union. It wasn't technical leaving the European Union in name only. It was leaving the European Union in its institutions, leaving the institutions and becoming an independent sovereign nation. This deal doesn't deliver on that.
Yeah, because you're still in the EU trading bloc and all that stuff, right?
It was still in the customs union, and there's regulatory divergence between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. So that's effectively split our own country in half in the name of avoiding a hard border, which I don't think was the same risk that it's said to be, and I don't think there was a way around it. I think there was technology could have avoided a hard border in Ireland, but Theresa May seems to take a different view.
But I've definitely heard, like, if you have a hard border in Northern Ireland, I've heard some people say that this might reignite tensions.
It probably would, but
NRA, I think it was.
The IRA, it would.
National Rifle Association. IRA,
It would ignite tensions, and it would definitely be unwelcome because there's never been a border on the island of Ireland ever. Since 1922, there's been a common travel area between the UK and Ireland, so you've been able to pass over the border as though it's the same country. But erecting a border now, the British won't do it, the Irish won't do it. So if there's a border erected, the blame lies squarely at the feet of the European Union because we don't want it, and the Irish don't want it. So if it's imposed, it won't be by us.
But it can be a deal between like the EU and Britain in terms of having a open border between Ireland and...
the issue with it on the EU side, we wouldn't really have the issue with it, is that customs checks, you'd have regulatory standards in the UK would diverge from EU regulatory standards, so you'd have goods passing across the border that met the standards in one country and not in the other, so that would be the issue there. But I mean, there are ways around that. I mean, trade is not that difficult, really. I mean, it can be done. There's a number of ways, especially utilising technology, that you could avoid a hard border in Ireland and avoid igniting tensions, but also, the practical problems of if you had to sacrifice Northern Ireland in order to avoid the hard border, you'd have a border in the middle of the United Kingdom dividing Great Britain from Northern Ireland. And that would just be frankly unacceptable. Just as much as Canada wouldn't accept, squaring off British Columbia or something. They wouldn't. You cannot have a border down the middle of your own country. It's unacceptable. So,
yeah. And the thing, for me, in terms of getting away from the whole Ireland border, for me, I think in the beginning when I saw Brexit, before Brexit, and during it,
in 2016,
2016, I thought of it as okay, I'm not for Brexit, nor am I. I was kind of in the middle because I'm Canada, right? I'm kind of in the middle, right? But then over time, I've thought of it more in that Britain is so integrated within the EU economy.
That was sort of done against the wishes of the British people, really more in the wishes of the British Parliament.
Mm-hmm. But
it was a coup by politicians more than just the gradual evolution into the EU. But I'd point to Canadians. They have a fractious relationship with the United States. Would you accept being in a customs union with them? Would you accept having American judges ruling on Canadian cases? Mm-hmm. Would you accept free movement of American people into Canada completely uncontrolled by the Canadian Minister for Immigration? I don't think... I mean, a lot of Canadians are supportive of the EU, but if they actually lived in it, I'm not sure they would be.
Yeah, one of the things that's problematic about the EU is this idea of a democratic deficit, right?
It's not democratic at all.
Well, it kind of is, because there is a
MEPs,
Yeah, there's the MEPs. I don't know what really forms the laws in the EU, frankly.
I don't think the EU knows what forms laws in the EU. It's so convoluted, but...
But I know that the EU Parliament can't veto or can't stop laws from being implemented. That's what I know.
In nation states, or
yeah.
I'm not sure about that, because regulations would have, if the EU implements regulations on any sector of the economy, nation states are powerless to stop it effectively. So laws that are made in the EU Parliament, even if all the British MEPs voted against it, if they had a majority in Europe, then it's law in the UK.
Law,
and we can't do anything about it.
I understand
So
what you mean. Yeah.
It could be completely against British interests, and we couldn't opt out of it or anything, because we're effectively federalising into one union. So, and
the thing that allows, I think that for Britain to leave easier than every other country is because it uses the pound, right?
Not in the
doesn't use the Eurozone. It's not part of the Eurozone. But yeah, so now that the Chequers deal right?
Chequers,
is basically breaking down with Theresa May, her government. Yeah. There's a possibility of a no deal, I think.
Yeah.
So how do you think the upcoming months, I don't know, is it March when it...
March 29th, I think.
March 29th, right.
Yeah.
So will Britain crash out, do you think, or will they postpone it and then...
I'd be open to postponing it if it meant a more orderly exit, but it can't be under the terms currently outlined in May's deal, because it doesn't deliver on Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called no deal by Remainers, but it really is just WTO terms, the same terms on which we trade with most of the world. So it's not like, we'd never be able to trade with any other countries ever again. That's not the case. We trade with the United States. They're a major trading partner, and we don't have a trade deal with them. We'd just be on WTO terms, and that's fine. I mean, we could negotiate free trade deals eventually, and then we could drop tariffs, and then we could produce the better, most efficient goods, cheaper goods for British consumers. It would be very good for trade to leave the EU, which is effectively a protectionist bloc protecting its own interests and not necessarily British interests. So,
yeah, I get what you mean in terms of that. The thing is with a no deal as well is that you'd have the border restrictions.
The border would
instantly,
be the issue.
Instantly take effect, and then you have problems with the movement of goods, all that stuff. Another thing is that a lot of companies, I'm pretty sure in the UK, now rely a lot more on EU goods than before, for example, before the EU.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a problem.
Yeah, it would be a painful... it would be painful to start, for sure. After the exit, it would be quite painful. But in the long term, you'd have a lot more opportunity to make Britain more competitive, lower taxes, and you could negotiate more free trade deals, and you could trade more with the rest of the world, which you can't do under EU structures.
So you're saying, like, basically in the beginning it might be hard, but then in the end it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean it's Project Fear Part 2 with, you know, planes won't be able to land in Europe. I mean, Canadian planes land in Europe and they're not in the EU. I'm sure we can find a way
obviously,
to, and we're not going to run out of medicine or something. You know, it's ridiculous. It's I don't know who's responsible for this attack on, you know, Brexit, but it's purely ridiculous. It's not, you know, even worth paying attention to, because they're not serious concerns, and they're not issues that are of serious relevance to Britain leaving even without a deal.
So I think that's a good wrap up for everything we've said.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for listening, and remember, when you're talking about politics, stay sober and take it easy.